What to do about Iran? That's the big question being discussed at an emergency summit in London. Around the table are senior officials from the 5 permanent UN Security Council members, plus Germany.
And they're all trying to devise a common strategy to pressure Tehran to halt its uranium enrichment program. More sanctions could be the result. But Iran's in no mood for compromise. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says Iran had no brake and no reverse gear. Barbara Serra is in London monitoring the talks.
The Foreign Office has confirmed that representatives from the 5 permanent Security Council members plus Germany are meeting in London. Initial discussions on how to deal with Iran's non-compliance to UN demands to stop its nuclear program. Now, we don't know what the exact agenda for that meeting is, but we can assume that diplomats here will be discussing possible future UN resolutions and possible tougher economic sanctions on Iran. We might also see United States pressure on European countries for them to impose bilateral sanctions on Iran, but also crucially trying to get Iran back to the negotiating table for further talks. So really diplomats here trying to come up with some kind of cohesion in their approach, trying to show a united front to Tehran. United front which may already be showing some cracks as this meeting goes on in London. Over in Russia, we've heard from the foreign minister there, Sergei Lavrov. Now, he's mentioned that forecasts and suggestions of military action have become more frequent and that he finds that very worrying indeed. Well, no word from the meeting here in London as to what is being discussed. We're not expecting any word later on today, but certainly the diplomats will be trying to come to some kind of consensus as to how they should deal with the problem of Iran.
Well, Iran's ambassador to the world's nuclear watchdog is in the Austrian capital, Vienna, where the IAEA is based. Ali Asghar Sultanieh says no other country has had more inspections than Iran.
Because there is no justification for us to stop our nuclear activities while our nuclear activities are under the full scope safeguard, and we have had over 2,000 mandate, the most robust inspection in the history of the IAEA. And we have fully cooperated with the international community. We are still party to NPT. Even after the resolution of United Nations Security Council, we have continued full cooperation with the IAEA and inspection without interruption. Then it means that we will continue our work without any interruption. That is a clear message. And the only thing is that we have always mentioned and reiterate, if there are any ambiguities and questions about our nuclear activities, we welcome to the negotiating table, and we are well prepared to remove any questions and ambiguities. This is the most cooperative, transparent approach.
Well, as the diplomats in London try to find new ways of dealing with Iran, mistrust between the United States and the Islamic Republic has reached a new high following frantic activity by both parties in the Gulf region. The arrival of USS John C. Stennis off the coast of Pakistan is seen by many analysts as confirmation that US preparations to attack Iran are already underway. Mike Hanna reports now from aboard the aircraft carrier where US forces are running flight drills day and night.
A massing of US forces as the diplomatic standoff with Iran intensifies. The USS John C. Stennis commences flight operations. For the first time since the invasion of Iraq in 2003, 2 US aircraft carriers deployed in one theater of operations. The destination on this day, the airspace above Afghanistan.
The enemy there is the Taliban, this extremist, violent, radical organization. And for us in the strike group, it's fairly straightforward. Right now, we're going to support coalition operations in Afghanistan.
This aircraft carrier represents the ultimate expression of US power and influence in the region. It's part of the 5th Fleet, a massive armada that controls some 2.5 million square miles of ocean. The might of this carrier directed at supporting the more than 30,000 coalition forces on the ground in Afghanistan, and a dismissal of speculation that the deployment of a second carrier strike force was prompted only by concerns over Iran.
We have a separate need for air support for our ground forces in Iraq. We have potential missions in Somalia and the maritime security operations, and we have these exercises to honor the commitment we made to our regional partners. That's more than one carrier can really do.
All of those on the ship insist that they are here to carry out policy, not to make it. That they are in this region to promote peace and stability. But enemies of the US ashore would disagree. They insist that the very presence of this aircraft carrier and the rest of the Fifth Fleet is a provocation, a modern expression of old-style gunboat diplomacy. It's all a matter of perception. There are some 5,000 people aboard this ship, and all believe they are part of a solution rather than a cause of a problem. Among the pilots in particular, a keen sense of what the mission is. Are you fighting against someone, or are you fighting for someone, essentially?
I think for the most part it's fighting for the multinational coalition that we have on the ground there. It's not a personal fight for us most time. It's a guy on the ground who's calling for support, and we're there to provide that support for him.
It's all too easy out here to see the missiles and bombs as merely streamlined objects, rather than instruments of destruction and death. The pilots who carry them maintain their actions are constantly reviewed, with the aim of avoiding what they call collateral damage.
It's important to protect our troops on the ground, but it's also important not to damage structures and people that aren't involved in the conflict.
When you're going to use ultimate force, you want to make sure you get it right.
11 hours after the flight operations commenced, the planes are still coming in. Dozens of flights have been launched off this flight deck throughout the day. And tomorrow, more of the same. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, aboard the USS John C. Stennis in the North Arabian Sea.
Iraq's vice president has escaped an apparent assassination attempt, but 13 other people died in the bomb blast in Baghdad. Adil Abdel Mahdi was giving a speech in an Iraqi ministry building when the bomb went off. He was taken to hospital with minor injuries.
Meanwhile, Iraq's president is also in hospital in Jordan, suffering from extreme fatigue and low blood pressure. But TV reports that Jalal Talabani suffered a heart attack are wrong, say Iraqi government officials. They say the 73-year-old was flown to Amman for tests after recent hard work made him ill, but they insist there's no cause for concern.
A Palestinian man has been shot dead in the West Bank city of Nablus. It's claimed he was caught in Israeli crossfire. Israel's army says it's uncovered a second explosive laboratory in as many days in Nablus. Tens of thousands of Palestinians remain under curfew on the second day of Israel's hunt for what they call terrorist suspects. Palestinian leaders say the largest raid for months is threatening peace efforts.
One person has died after jumping from the 6th floor of a burning building in Bangladesh. Another 2 people died of burn injuries in the hospital in the capital Dhaka. Air Force helicopters and firefighters struggled for hours to bring the blaze under control.
A TV cameraman has captured the moment when a burnt-out ferry capsized. Journalists were filming damage aboard the Lavina 1, which burst into flames off Indonesia last week, killing 42 passengers at least. Well, the latest drama killed a cameraman and 3 other people are missing, presumed drowned.
Victims of the Srebrenica massacre are vowing to continue their fight for justice. That's after the United Nations highest court cleared Serbia of committing genocide against Bosnia's Muslims during the Balkans War of the 1990s.
If the landmark case had been successful, Bosnia would have sought billions of dollars in compensation, as Alan Fisher reports from Sarajevo.
It was bloody and brutal. As many as 200,000 people died in the wars in the Balkans, a dark chapter in Europe in the last days of the 20th century. In Bosnia, Muslim towns and villages were devastated by Serb forces. This they called ethnic cleansing. The Bosnians insist the government of Serbia-Montenegro dictated, directed and supported. This, they say, was genocide. The World Court has now ruled it wasn't.
It must have been clear that there was a serious risk of genocide at Srebrenica. Yet the respondent has not shown that it took any initiative to prevent what happened or any action on its part to avert the atrocities which were being committed. It must therefore be concluded that the organs of the respondent did nothing to prevent